any of us if you have any questions. Feel free to stay for lunch after the chanting. My name is Tracy. My Dharma name is Xianwan, and I am here today to give a talk on mindfulness. It may sound very familiar to those of you who are at the annual Bodhisattva retreat. It is not quite the same, however, because I decided to add some bits of information so those of you that were here would not be bored. Unless you were bored at my last talk, and then you may be bored again. I wanted to first bring up, I find it somewhat of a funny story about Easter. I was very lucky one year, and I was trying to remember driving here what year it was. Oh, I think it was around 2002, and I was in New York City at the time. And I didn't realize it was getting close to Easter. And we went into, my mother was with me and she wanted to go to Macy's. That's a very large department store in New York City. At the time, St. Louis did not have a Macy's. And she just had seen a particular movie, I cannot remember the name, I think it might have been a Santa Claus movie where they featured Macy's, and she really wanted to see it. So we go into Macy's, and I noticed this laughter and so many pictures being taken, and they were obviously tourists. I do not remember from what country because I was able to talk to them. They're wonderful people. And they were laughing and having so much fun and pointing and taking so many pictures. And I went up next to them to see what all of this joy and excitement was about. And one of them, who was the interpreter, said, "Can you help us out? Can you explain something to us?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "There's this giant animal. It's this giant bunny. And all of these people are in line, and they're sitting their children on this bunny." And some of the kids are laughing, and some of the kids are crying. We've never seen this before. Can you please explain to us what this is? And in that moment was when I realized, wow, what have we done with Easter? And you never realize how difficult that is to explain until you're surrounded by people who are really, truly watching me, holding on to my every word for me to explain. So I tried my best to explain what Easter actually was and what the bunny had to do with it, but I think I left them more confused. I had a lot of, but it kind of felt like the we don't understand what you're saying, but we'll accept it. But it sticks with me every Easter. Such a happy memory of how excited those people were, while at the same time very confused why we were willingly giving our children to this gigantic, somewhat scary-looking bunny. So a brief tidbit, I've noticed when I was looking through my talks, quite a few of the talks I've given have been during the holidays. And so I've noticed that in all the talks I've done, I like to give just a little bit of information about the holiday, especially for anyone who may not have, very much information about Easter. They may not have been born in an environment where Easter was celebrated. So I like to give a little bit of talk about that too. So basically, Easter in Christianity is considered the most holy holiday. Many people mistakenly think that is Christmas when Jesus was born, but it's actually not. Easter is actually considered the most holy day in Christianity. And this is the day where the Friday before, which is Good Friday, Jesus died on the cross. And on the third day, which is Easter Sunday, he rose again. So for many people, many families do not call it Easter Sunday, they may call it Resurrection Sunday. So this resurrection is the miracle and what is celebrated on Easter. And I don't think there are any bunnies around, but there may have been. Don't quote me on that. So I found a talk online. I like to find any way where my previous Christian teachings can help me with my current Buddhist teachings. It's a very important thing to me. I don't want to just completely forget any of my past, but I like to find a way to incorporate it with my present. So I did find a really nice talk online. The talk was by a Zen teacher who did not leave his name, and he discussed how his teacher likes to do the very same thing. He likes to take Christian holidays, since so many of his people that come to see him were Christians or still consider themselves Christians, And he does this to help them on the Buddhist path. So he had a quote that I thought was very beautiful. He said, resurrection can actually be the heart of Buddhism. Unless you understand about resurrection, you cannot understand what Buddhism is about. Dying is the easy part. The resurrection is the hard part. Any religion that doesn't teach resurrection may be a false religion. So the writer then elaborates and says, do you understand what he meant when he said resurrection is the heart of Buddhism? Well, it goes back to the experience of no self. Allowing the self to dissolve is half of the enlightenment experience. Allowing the self to reform without interference, that's a form of resurrection, isn't it? So practicing no self, seeing the interconnectedness of all and the impermanence of all things may be seen as resurrections within each of us. So rather than looking for a higher power who's able to resurrect, we may be able to see these moments of resurrection within ourselves when we're able to see the no self and the impermanence. I really like that. I thought it was a very nice analogy for me to remember within myself. So back to the purpose of this talk. This is a repeat talk from our Bodhisattva retreat we took a few weeks ago. And I was given the topic of mindfulness by Don, which I'm happy he did because that is one of my topics I really like to focus on in my personal life and professional. And so I decided to do a little bit different slant and focus on some of the modern day ideas of mindfulness. Mindfulness is everywhere right now. You can go to any bookstore, go to any Google article, and you will find information on mindfulness. So my information is from a book called Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Has anyone read this book? Okay, it's a very excellent book to read, and I especially recommend he did a new edition in 2013. So if you're interested in reading the book, I would get the most recent one, because he has a lot of, if you are interested in brain research and brain study. If you are not, the older edition's fine, but this new edition goes into great length about all of the research on the brain that has been done to show how important mindfulness is. Very interesting information. But for anyone who does not know who Jon Kabat-Zinn is, he actually created and operates the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program. It is at the Stress Reduction Clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And what it is it's a 12-week program. Typically, all of the patients are referred by medical doctors who are finding that their patients have some severe illnesses, be it cancer, be it severe diabetes, or severe mental illnesses, extreme anxiety that's keeping them at home, or extreme depression. So they refer these patients to the Stress Reduction Clinic program. And it is a very intense 12-week program. And they do a lot of data on it to see the results, and the results have actually been quite good. And again, he wrote a new addition to this book in 2013 due to the ever-growing scientific research focused on mindfulness. He wrote in this book that in 2005, which is not that long ago, there were only about 100 papers in scientific and medical literature on mindfulness. So I'm sure there were in the non-medical and scientific literature, but with the scientific and medical literature, there were only about 100 papers. Now in 2013, 8 years later, there are over 1,500 papers, as well as full scientific books. And there's even a scientific journal called Mindfulness, which I'm very, very excited to check out. And in looking on how I could check it out for myself, I discovered there is now a second journal called the Journal of Clinical Mindfulness and Meditation. So for someone like me who works in the mental health field, I like to know about mindfulness, not just for my own practice, but how I can help my clients. So the idea that there are actually 2 journals now whose entire focus is on mindfulness is pretty amazing, and is showing how the medical community is starting to realize that this might be a legitimate thing. Kabat-Zinn, when he talks about mindfulness, he believes in 7 factors in a mindfulness practice. These are attitudinal ones. These are ones that it's our attitude that can shape these. And this talk will focus on the 7. The 7 are, number 1 is non-judging, number 2 is patience, Number 3 is beginner's mind. Number 4 is trust. 5 is non-striving. 6 is acceptance. And 7 is letting go. He mentions that they are interdependent on each other. You may work on one at a time. You may work on several at a time. But as you begin to learn how to work with one, the others seem to come into play. And when I was just recently thinking about these, I planted my first garden yesterday. Never planted a garden before. I decided it was time. Planted my first garden. And so I think that I'm going to be thinking about these 7 things quite a bit as I'm attempting to watch my garden grow. But there might be something within you too that these 7 things will speak to you. So the first one is non-judging. He explains non-judging. He says mindfulness is cultivated by focusing on moment to moment. You're aware of what is happening right now in this moment. And you're trying as hard as you can to not get caught up in your ideas, opinions, likes, and dislikes. We all have them. Many new meditators think there is something wrong. My mind is not quiet right now. I have all kinds of things swirling through my mind. That is normal. We all have them. But with mindfulness, we're trying to focus with awareness without getting caught up in them. To improve on this, we must first become aware of just how many thoughts, judgments, and reactions stream through our heads. I don't know about all of you, but the first time I sat down and really focused with awareness on how many thoughts went through my head, I actually thought I might be a bit mentally insane. Just to be completely honest, I was amazed not only how many thoughts and judgments go in my head, but how random they are, and how one pops in and one pops out, and they might not have any relevance or anything at all, to do with each other. And then I talked to other people who made me feel better and said, oh, no. We've all experienced this. Once we do begin to notice this, however, we are often surprised, as I was, at how much activity is in our minds, and we may become very discouraged. This is why I cannot say enough about how much my Sangha is an ultimate gift to me. It's just a joy to have people to practice with you. Because if you are practicing alone on this path and these things come up, it's really hard to find someone who you can sit with and talk with about these things. So we can be extremely surprised by how much activity is in our minds and definitely become discouraged. We might start hearing things in our heads such as, I can't meditate, it's too hard. I can't turn off my mind. This is boring. Nothing is going to happen from this. What's the use of sitting? And we often then, of course, judge our meditation experience. Now, I'm only focusing on the negative, but sometimes we can be quite guilty of focusing on the positive as well. This was the best meditation experience I've ever had in my life. I can't believe how much closer I may be to enlightenment now. Wow, all of our meditation experiences may be just like this one. I am getting so good at this. This is a judgment as well, which unfortunately the balloon will burst. Most possibly at your next sitting, where it cannot compare. So we do these judgments not only when we're meditating, but afterwards. And everywhere in the world, we have judging that occurs. So this is a direct quote by John Kabat-Zinn. This habit of categorizing and judging our experience locks us into automatic reactions that we are not even aware of, and that often have no objective basis at all. These judgments tend to dominate our minds, making it difficult for us ever to find any peace within ourselves or to develop any discernment as to what may actually be going on inwardly or outwardly. So how to combat this? He believes, as well as I do, that it is important to begin understanding non-judging. This is when we observe that feelings and thoughts that are occurring and just observe. We suspend the judgment and assume a stance of impartiality. We remind ourselves to simply observe what is unfolding while also realizing that it is impermanent and will pass. And when we can do this and continue to do this, we can learn to simply watch whatever comes up, not react to them, and go back to our breathing. Number 2 is patience. Patience is a form of wisdom, where we both understand and accept the fact that things must unfold in their own time. I think I read somewhere that patience, out of all 7 of these, this seems to be the one that the Americans have the most difficult time with. And I will say, to somewhat defend ourselves, I do feel that we are just surrounded by this fast idea of now, get this now, do this now. So we have to kind of counteract that societal message. The example in the book is of a butterfly when it's in a cocoon. So you have this beautiful butterfly, and with patience and time, this cocoon will open up and the butterfly will come out. But if a child walks over and tries to help them out by opening it, this is not helpful. So this is very true with patience as well. I must remember this with my garden. Not overwater it, not think maybe I should put fertilizer even though I don't want to. I have to have patience. It'll come up in its own time. In the same way, I think those of us that are therapists know the importance of patience. When we have so many clients who are so hurting and have so much stress and so much anxiety, and they truly just want to be fixed and just feel better. And it takes so much compassion and so much love to be able to explain patience to them in a way for them to fully understand it and not feel as if you're just pushing them away or not fully understanding the pain they're going through. And in the same way, we cultivate patience towards our own minds and bodies when practicing mindfulness. There is no need to be impatient with yourself. You allow all experiences to happen and unfold in their own time. I was working with teens once on meditation. We have a wonderful group that comes once a year, and they're from the St. Louis City juvenile program. So all of these kids have had something happen in their life to where they now need a deputy juvenile officer. And most of them have lived in St. Louis City their whole life. So they come here from about 9 to 1 once a year. We would love to do it twice a year. And these kids come from all over, and before they even get out of their vans, they're amazed just with nature, seeing the lakes and the trees and all of these things. But we get to meditation too, and many of them are very excited to learn meditation, but this patience reminds me of one of the little boys who, last I heard, he was one of our first groups, I believe 4 years ago, and he is still meditating. His grandma said he was with grandma, and his grandma sends us yearly updates, and he is still meditating. But he was sat down for his first meditation, and we had talked about things coming up. And then it was a separate meditation, and he raised his hand so happy, and he said, I'm so proud of myself. I noticed I only had like 134 things come up the first time, and now this time I only had like 78 things, so I must be getting better. And I thought that was so sweet, but at the same time we wanted to talk about, that could get really confusing if you're counting, my dear. Whereas next to him was a girl who would refuse to meditate, and she came up to me very quiet, and she kind of went like this to me, and she said, I can't meditate, it's too painful. And I said, are you hurt? Do you need to sit on a chair? Would you like to try a bench? She said, no. Every time I try to meditate, I think of all the horrible things that happened to me, and I can't handle that pain. So 2 very different situations where we had to teach them how important it is to be patient with what's going on. If you guys are ever interested, we have another one coming up in June. It's probably my favorite thing we do here, to see how these kids are when they come off of the van, and then to see how they are when they leave. We had one last year that was insistent on meeting Master Guru because he knew that it was within his power to be what he called a Buddhist monk. And Master Jiru met with him, and it was a really beautiful conversation because he didn't look down. He completely trusted the fact that this little boy knew this is what he would, this was okay. I'm sold. When can I come? Can I come now? Master Jiru was like, no, son, your mom would miss you, but when it's your time, you can come. So it is a really wonderful program. So again, no need to be impatient with ourselves. We allow all experiences to happen and unfold in their own time. And we treat ourselves as if we would treat a baby, trying to learn how to crawl or walk the first time. We accept where they are, we encourage, and we're patient with their progress. Number 3 is beginner's mind. This is an idea of allowing your mind to see everything as if it's for the first time, as if you have never seen it before. So often we'll walk into a room, or we'll walk into our home, or we'll walk into our office, or we'll interact with a friend, and we'll interact with our husbands, and we just assume they look the same. We assume everything in the room is the same. We kind of just walk and don't even notice. But with a beginner's mind, you walk into a space, you look at someone as if you've never seen them before. And I have to say, it's really amazing. I've been practicing this for about 2 weeks. And every day so far when I've walked in my office, I've noticed something that wasn't there before. And I'm the only one who's decorated my office. So it's a pretty amazing thing to try. And we resolve to sit at each meditation session in this way. No matter how many years you've meditated, you sit at your cushion with a beginner's mind, expecting for something new to unfold. This allows us to be receptive to new possibilities and keeps us from getting stuck or by this ever assuming we already know how things are going to be. Some of us are very guilty of this. Oh, I know it's going to happen. It's kind of warm in here right now, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start sweating and I'm not going to have a good session. And we create this I already know when there's no possible way you could know because it hasn't happened yet. So beginner's mind is a very beautiful practice. I do this quite a bit with my clients. Beginner's mind, not just in meditation, but can also be used with family and when on walks. I know of a very successful marriage therapist who one of her exercises is if there's a couple who is having trouble relating to each other or having marriage troubles, she wants them to each spend about 2 to 3 minutes just looking at each other and noticing something about them that you had not noticed before. And apparently it is a very powerful, very emotional exercise to really see your spouse and not just look at them and move on. And also it's wonderful doing this with children on walks. I think walks is one of the most natural, organic way to bring up beginner's mind because I feel like, especially at this time of year, every time you take a walk, something new has blossomed. And I just took my walk today and I noticed the nest in our tree has 4 bright blue eggs in it, and I know they weren't in there tomorrow. It's a very easy way to practice beginner's mind. Number 4 is trust. Trust is developing a basic trust in yourself, and a trust in your feelings, and a trust in what you're experiencing. You have to trust you are discovering a more full you. You are not trying to become like anyone else. So there may be someone that you just really respect as a meditation instructor, or someone who just really seems to you like a great example of a meditator, but you're not trying to become like that person. You're trying to become the most full you that you can be. It's also about trusting in your intuition and in your needs. If you need to move while you're meditating, your intuition knows whether you really need to or not. I use the yoga example. I consistently have to trust in my intuition and my needs and listen to my body when I do yoga. Because I seem to want to push myself into what everyone else is doing. It's not trust in my body. And you also had to trust in the process and in your ability to engage in this process. Number 5, non-striving. Almost everything we do in this world, especially outside of MABA, It seems we're doing this for a purpose, to get something, to go somewhere. Just today, my husband gave me our schedule. Okay, make sure when you're done with your talk, we have to get in the car, we have to go here, I'm making the beans, we'll go see your mom and dad, and it's just all the time. We have this schedule. We're going somewhere, we're getting somewhere, we're doing something. So quite often, it would not be surprising, would it, if we did this with meditation as well, because we do this with so many other areas in our life. Okay, I'm going to sit down, it's going to be 30 minutes. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then the 30 minutes is up, and then we're going to do the walking. And so it's this whole schedule in our head with meditation. And actually in meditation, I think we can all agree that that could absolutely be an obstacle. Meditation has no goal, no destination, no self. We often go into our sitting with ideas. I'm going to get relaxed now, I might have trouble with this one, etc. But in non-striving, you accept, you notice where you are. Pain may come, tension, irritability, happiness, calm. We're not striving for them to change. We're not striving for them to stay the same. We just notice. And the quote that John Kabat-Zinn gives in his book is, in the meditative domain, the best way to achieve your goals is to back off from striving for results and instead to start focusing carefully on seeing and accepting things as they are moment by moment. This is the exact opposite of any of us who have had any university education. Can you imagine our college professor telling us, your goal is to get an A in this class? Okay, back off from striving. But no, in the meditative domain, actually I think it could have been quite helpful for many of my university studies, to be honest, to back off a little bit from the striving in an attempt to really take in what I was learning. But in the meditative domain, absolutely accepting and seeing things as they are right in this moment. Number 6 is acceptance. And acceptance is seeing things as they actually are in this present moment. Not seeing things for what they were, not seeing things for what they can be, but seeing things as they actually are in the present. Not immediately trying to fix the present, not immediately trying to run away from the present, ignore the present, or cling to the present, but just seeing it as it is. A true definition of healing that we use quite often in the mental health industry is coming to terms with things as they are. We waste a lot of energy denying, daydreaming, resisting, clinging to what is already here and may be gone the very next day. One of my favorite examples of this are some of the teams I work with where I might say, it looks like you're angry. I'm not angry! And just the need to say those 3 words, I'm not angry, it seems a bit of an ignoring what's really going on when you can see throughout the body that there's definitely anger there. Acceptance does not mean you take a passive attitude towards everything or you're satisfied with the ways of the world. There are many things I'm trying very hard to change in the dog rescue community right now. I am not happy with the way our animals are being treated, but I can actively do this while completely accepting the way they are now. Quite a subtle difference, but there is one. There can definitely be attempts to change while accepting where things are. And it's perfect to not use shoulds when it comes to acceptance. You shouldn't be this, I should be that. Let the shoulds go away. For the last one, letting go, I just have a story that comes from the book. I thought it was a wonderful story. The story does make me sad because it is about hunters who are catching monkeys, but it is an idea of how the monkey is losing out on these. So they say in India, or there are stories of such, that there is a particularly clever way of catching monkeys. As the story goes, hunters will cut a hole in a coconut that is just big enough for a monkey to put his flat hand through. Then they will drill 2 smaller holes in the other end, pass a wire through, and secure the coconut to a base of a tree. Then they slip a banana inside the coconut through the hole and hide. The monkey comes down, puts his hand in, grabs a hold of the banana. The hole is crafted so that the open hand could go in and out, but a fist cannot. All the monkey has to do to be free is to let go of the banana. But they said about 80% of them don't let go, and they're captured. So my response to that, to all of you, is to just let go of that banana. Whatever that banana is for you. No more grasping it and letting it go. I think this book is a really wonderful book, and again, for anyone who's interested, it's called Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and the entire book is on mindfulness, and this is just one very small section on it. So I thank you all so much for listening. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Let go of